you can't change, where you feel your heart breaking and you're thinking it's the end. That's where grace begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to Season 2 of Grace Begins, where we share incredible stories of where so many people have found their faith journey, have found God in their life, and has the moments that transform their life and put them back on the path with Christ. So we're super excited to have another amazing guest here today. We have Joel Thomas, who is the founder of Stratos Jets, and they charter jets all over the place. And we're really excited. I'm going to let you tell a little bit more about what you do. But I think I must have come across you somewhere, and I somewhere in your story I saw it, and that's why I was like, I need to reach out to him and have him, because I love anybody who talks about their faith walk and that moment, that life-altering moment where you find God and get back on that path with him. So that's where I want to start. So welcome to Grace Begins.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for reaching out. It's an honor to be a part of your podcast and to share a little bit of my background and my faith journey. I think testimony is the key to helping other people know that, God is active and present in their life. So grateful to be a part of this.
Yeah, thank you. It means a lot. I just, years ago, I felt like God just was calling me to do some kind of ministry work, and no way should I be at any pulpit or anything like that. I'm too wild for that. But I'm like, I knew this podcast would just, and people were like, well, who are you going to interview? And I'm like, I just think it's one of those things. If you build it, they will come, right? The right people will come and the right story. So I'm really excited to bring one more story. So tell us about the beginning years of Joel. Like what you're growing up, your background on that a little bit, your family, and what led you to the next chapter.
Sure. So I grew up in a typical American family. Mom and dad separated early on, and so I had stepdad and mom, and then I had dad and stepmom, two separate houses. So you're a very traditional family. And interestingly enough, my mom and my stepdad were very aligned spiritually and politically and just culturally. They were very aligned. Likewise, my dad and my stepmom were. However, my mom and dad were not. So with them being kind of polar in their kind of the way that they lived their lives, my mom was very, we went to private Christian school, and there was a high expectation for, being respectful and to knowing the Lord. And then on my dad's side, he was a little bit more fun. He was more laid back and less rigid. And, my mom always said, you don't want to be like your dad. And my dad always said, we've got a lot of great things on this side. So I got to know them both and gravitated more towards the vision and the lifestyle that my mom and my stepdad, I spent most of my childhood in their home, and really picked up on who they are as people. We went to private Christian school. My sisters and I went to private Christian school, and it's called the Master's Academy. And honestly, it was such a valuable thing for me because I did get to know the Lord. I was in those innocent phases of life, right, where, you're doing what you can to really understand the world and make friends and these types of things. And it really created great value for me to kind of know the Lord and to know the gospel and to make that decision. So early on, I made a decision to follow God. But I learned through life that you actually need to make that decision daily. As I was young, it wasn't very difficult because I was in a kind of like an isolated bubble. But one day, my mom and stepdad were going down the path of divorce, and I started rebelling, total prodigal son, type of thing. Said, well, if my mom and dad are divorcing, then I'm going to look to my real dad's lifestyle. And so I started living, that lifestyle. And the good news is that the Holy Spirit lived in me and was protecting me from going too far, from guiding me back to Him at all times. There was a 4 or 5 year period of time where I was kind of resistant. I was mostly through my college age, from maybe senior year of high school through through college. And then I was very lucky in school. I had a really good friend named Josh, And we worked together at the Melting Pot. We were friends in class. And one day, some girl invited him to church, and he was like, Joel, you should come with me. So I came. Turned out the church that I went to was called Summit, and it was founded by one of the kids that was in my class's older brother. And there were like 300 people that I knew at that church, and it immediately became my church home. And I was finally going back to church, and kind of, it was a very prodigal son returns moment for me.
Mm.
So anyways, long story short, I went to Summit for many years, got very involved like with the ministry, with, the church life itself, and not just, I was in small groups and things, but also like serving on the church, with the church, and doing service projects and whatnot. So it was a big part of my life. And simultaneously, I had graduated college and I was doing a job for a great company, but it didn't feel like it was my future. I just felt like I have to find what my next right step is. So I was praying. I asked God, to reveal this to me, 25 years old, and he led me into aviation. Ultimately, I wanted to glorify God in my work, and I wanted to be a light to those, because our industry, as you can imagine, as you see, there's some really expensive assets involved. And whenever there's money to be made, there's dishonest brokers all around. And so my concept was I was going to help people make educated buying decisions, honor God by honoring them, and making sure that we were protecting them in these large financial transactions. So that was kind of like my idea. And I went to my stepdad and I told him my idea and my hopes. And he did something that was unforgettable. Instead of just listening to me, he said, Joel, let's go into business. How can I support you? And we started Stratos Jets. So that was back in 2007. The mission hasn't changed. It's to glorify God in our workplace. We navigated some ups, some downs, some ups again. And where we're at now is we've actually pivoted to a franchising model where our company provides the home office. So Stratos Jets is no longer a charter broker. It is a franchisor that supports brokerages. So we provide the liquidity, the back office. We provide the knowledge base, all of the support that they need for coordinating and organizing any flight. And we're setting a higher standard for excellence in the industry. So give God the glory for getting us here.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what a good time to be doing what you're doing, because I feel like 20 years ago, I maybe knew one person that had a jet. Now I feel like every other person I know has their own, plane, or at least even if they don't own it, they're taking a jet somewhere else, right? So what a great time for you to be in this, where everybody's wanting to fly private now. So I think it's a blessing.
Yeah, it really is. And I feel so grateful because at the very beginning, you had talked about how like we got connected and how if God brings you to it, then there's going to be success. I truly believe that because of our vision statement, just like our founders did, the American founders did, they consecrated America for the glory of God. Before I started Stratos, I did the same. I got on my knees and I prayed and I said, Lord, I want this to be your business. And throughout my 18 years of business, there's been a tension there between like what Joel wants to do and what God wants to do. And, it's been one of those things where every day you have to kind of like, hey, what does God, you have to hear him out. Mm-hmm. And, there's been some ups and there's been some downs. And what I like to say is the challenges, the trials of many kinds have been loving corrections to bring, me back to God. And I'll tell you, my biggest hurdle came when I was young. Let's see, we started, I was 26 when I actually incorporated Stratos Jets. By the age 30, I was doing financially extremely well. We were growing the company. It was a bunch of my friends. We were young and, pride seeped in. And, one of the scary things about it is you don't even realize it. You're like, you have a lot of people in your life. They say, man, you should be proud of what you've done. Like, this is pretty amazing. You've built a really cool business and you should be proud of that. And all of a sudden, at first you're like, no, this is God's company. You're very humble. But after time, you start to believe it, and you start to believe, yeah, actually look at what I've done. And, fell victim to that from age 30 to 33. And then God lovingly corrected me on my 33rd birthday.
Lovingly corrected. I've been there. Yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah, it's funny. So I can look back, right? Like I've come out the other side. It's more than a decade later. I've come out the other side, and I have so much greater life experience and so much appreciation for God, like His faithfulness in getting me through. So just paint that picture for you real quick, because this is where I literally have had to make the decision to follow God daily, and this is kind of where the insights really that guide me today have come from. So briefly, we were a $30 million company in 2013. We did excellent, 30 million in revenue, and January 6th, start of 2014, was my 33rd birthday. I walked in the door to almost eight out of 10 salespeople having resigned and gone to start their own brokerage with the backing and support of somebody that's in the industry. So the thing is that they were all peers. They were all my friends, right? I built this business with friends, and I was broken in a lot of ways. I was broken financially. I mean, we just went from 30 million down to like $6 million in revenue in 2014. And, I was broken. And I was also like embarrassed because of the industry knew what was happening. I was heartbroken over the relationships. They were all friends. They were all my college buddies, my closest friends. And I felt betrayed, and I felt heartbroken over it. And it's really interesting. Like I had a lot of choices to make at that time. I mean, I was on the verge of suicidal thoughts, those types of things. And there's two little moments that occurred. I can recall exactly where I was. I was sitting at lunch at Hula Hands, which is I think they've gone out of business now, but it was a great restaurant. Loved Hula Hands. Anyhow, I was sitting at lunch, and my mom and dad were there, and it was kind of, they knew that I was going through a very difficult time. This was like maybe 2 months after everybody left, and I was, they could tell. And so sat down, and I was just pouring my heart out to my mom and my stepdad, and I just, I was crying. I was heartbroken, and my mom, obviously with the way moms are, there's nowhere else you'd rather be than in your mom's arms and the love that they give. And my dad was hearing what I had to say, and he said, Joel, I know this is a setback, and I know that you're going through some hard times, but, if you can think back to the beginning of your journey, like your first 3 years weren't very easy either. And I think you've got what it takes to rebuild. If that's what you want to do, you've got what it takes. And that moment was very freeing to me. I left lunch, went home, and I was on my back porch, the home I still live in now. I was on my back porch over by the grill, and I just, on the way home, I had listened to Tim Keller's 2 great test podcasts. And briefly, sidebar, Tim Keller in that podcast says there's 2 times in life where you're going to be in great spiritual danger. And those are when everything is going so well, and you turn and you say, man, look at what I've done. I don't need God. This great spiritual danger. And then the other times are when things are so low, when it's the worst, and it's like, God, how could you let this happen? How dare you? I can't trust you, and those types of things. And, how you react to either of those scenarios really charts the course of the rest of your life. And so I was at that moment. I was at that crossroads of, everything I had been told about Jesus over these years. Like, was I going to believe that? Or was I going to, kind of try and figure out my own way? And fortunately, my college years informed me that trying my own way was not fulfilling, not glorifying to God. It wasn't good. And so God used what was distance to draw me nearer to him. And I said, okay, God, I made a deal with him. I said, all right, God, you need to show up. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to be faithful, and you need to show up. And I literally audibly said this out loud. And I went on to face the next 5 years of incredible challenges. But it was daily faithful. Very fortunate. A friend of mine created an app called the Thankful app. So for those of you who haven't seen that, the Thankful app, it's basically a daily journal where you give glory to God. I set mine for 7 a.m. I'm less active with it today, but I have about 1,200 entries, so I'm not terribly inactive with it.
Oh.
But I would literally, it was such a hard time. The things I would go outside at 7 a.m. and the things that I would say I'm thankful for were like, man, I'm thankful that the birds are chirping. I'm thankful that the sky and the temperature is cool, and then progressively as I got more and more thankful, they became prayers. My thankfuls became prayers. And so my friend created this app, and it was very valuable for me going through this season. And for 5 years, it took just 110-hour work week, like literally eye open to eye close every single day, just to not lose $10,000 that month or not lose $20,000 that month. It was so hard to rebuild. But I had some really great clients who referred me to other great clients, and they believed in me. And, I just kept literally having every day to be faithful to God, and he carried me through it. And what's really interesting is that it never really got easier. God, I think back to Abraham as Isaac, right? He said, I'm going to bless you with the son. He didn't trust God, and he got Ishmael. Then finally God gave him and Sarah a baby. They gave him Isaac, and God said, hey, you know what? I know you love him, but I need you to trust me, and we're going to go up to the mountain, and you're going to give him back to me, the Lord. And his faithfulness and willingness to trust God in that plan, that story motivated me to continue to trust God. And, I don't want to list out everything, but over that 5-year period of time, I got to be several $100,000 in debt, taking money out of my house to keep liquidity in the company. That was kind of the easy stuff to deal with. I had 110-hour work weeks, eye open, eye closed. So relationships were faltering, personal relationships. I was doing everything I could to be faithful in the business and to keep myself going, to the point where, my dog died. I never mourned him. My dad, my real dad, passed away, had a heart attack. It took me like 3 years to be able to open my heart up to actually mourning the fact and understanding that my dad was actually gone. He died in 2017, and it was probably 2020 before I really got to grieve him, because I was just working so hard. And, honestly, I remember sitting in my kitchen, and a buddy of mine had gotten married. He's younger than me, like 5 years younger. I had been spending all this time trying to reestablish my foundation, and just trusting God that, that he would come through. And, in 2019, he did. Things, actually, it was late 2018, but things started to turn around. And God, I prayed to him. I said, God, I know you asked me to be faithful and to trust you, but I'm at the end of my rope here. I need you to show up now. And until I asked him for that, there was no movement. I was trying to do it all in my own power. But then I literally humbled myself. And I said, I've been trying to trust you. I've been trying to do this. I need you to show up. And immediately he said, okay, I'll give you some relief. And then I want to fast forward to another topic that's very similar. In 2018, my sister got married, and the business was finally getting healthy again. I think we broke even in August of 2018. So we were able to pay back some of that debt. And, I had this opportunity to move to St. Pete. And I said, God, I'm going to get involved in the church there. I'm going to get married. I'm going to move to St. Pete and find my wife. Well, that didn't happen. I went there, and it wasn't that there weren't great people that live in St. Pete, but it just wasn't what God had in store for me. But it was a regenerative and good period of my life. And I ended up coming back home to Orlando because my business was actually recovered. I was ready to hire some people, regrow the company, and God was providing. And so we started hiring people. I moved back to Orlando on October 1st of 2019. Halloween 2019, I was single. I live in this neighborhood where we literally will have 3,000 trick-or-treaters at the house every single year. So
Wow.
I open the door and I'm passing out candy, and you see these beautiful families, and my heart is just breaking. I saw my really close friend Tyler get married to a wonderful woman. My sister get married to her husband. I saw a lot of things happening, and I felt like, God, I'm being left behind. Like, where is my family? I literally went inside. I shut the door, went inside, got on my face, like kneeled down, and just cried out to God. And I said, when am I going to find my family? Where are they? And he said, get up and, go outside and spend time with your parents. So I did. My mom encouraged me. She said, look, get away from this. Go walk down to the neighborhood restaurants and, take your mind off things. So I walked down there, and sure enough, I met this girl named Farron. And we spent the entire night talking about, how God's been active in our life. And she turned out to become my wife. 1 hour after praying to God and asking him, where is my family? And now we have 3 beautiful girls. I wish I could share a little video the other day. My girls were together, and my littlest one, well, my 2.5-year-old, I have a 9-month-old as well. But my 2.5-year-old was leading a blessing. And what's so cute was, I lead the blessing at dinner. And one of the things that I routinely say is, Lord, we want to walk daily with you all the days of our life. And she repeated those words. And, I just, I know a lot of people say, how can you believe in God? I mean, he doesn't exist and you can't see him. But when you have a personal relationship with him, it's the greatest evidence there is. And, I think that, being able to share, and I just dumped a lot of information, but being able to share this, I think, will help other people to identify, like, where is God active in their life? When is he present? And sometimes his presence looks a lot like waiting for you to soften your heart. I will tell you, I went to another church called Celebration Church at the time, and they did this 6 or 8 week series on forgiveness. One of the things they said is forgiven people forgive people. And this was probably in mid 2017, right after my dad passed away. I went to this church service, and they talked about this. And, as you could imagine, in 2014, I lost my friends, and I felt betrayed by them. I had a lot of pain and a lot of anger, and I held things against, each one of them. I had my own gripes and my own grudges. And, in the Bible, it says, forgiveness is, the whole story of the Bible is about forgiveness. But, but God, if you're not willing to forgive, like, is God hearing your prayer? And I can't think of the exact verse, but, you can't be connected and in relationship with God when you're holding things against. And he said, look, vengeance is mine. Not that I want God to harm them in any way, shape, or form, but I didn't recover. This business didn't recover. I emotionally didn't recover until I personally forgave each one of those people.
Yeah.
I literally had to forgive Chris, Kevin, Ricky, Yuri, Will, every single one of them. James, I had to forgive them all one-on-one before I started to heal internally. And it took me about 4 years to get there. And I think through the faith, just hearing God out, staying faithful, walking in his presence, he led me to these conclusions that led me to actions that led me to, like, my heart restoring. And here I am, it's 10 years later, 2025, so 11 years later. Our business is thriving, and what we're doing is we're opening the door for others to build their business, to fulfill their hopes and dreams. And, I'm doing what I can to infuse a little bit of my story and a little bit of my testimony into the relationships I have with our franchise owners.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to, I want to talk about you talking about the Abrahamic moments. It was really interesting this morning before we started. I went into my prayer closet and I always like to, I don't like to plan too much for the podcast. I like to let God kind of lead it. And I was like, God, wherever you want to lead it. And tomorrow is kind of an interesting day for me. And I wasn't going to bring it up. I mean, the listeners know what last year, and I touched on it with you, but I didn't really go into detail. Last year was the year that nearly broke me. Like, and then for you to start talking about what you're talking about with that Abrahamic moment. So last year in a 3-day period, I lost my mom, and then I was told I was going to lose my son, all in a 3-day period. Yeah, they like your son has cancer. We're confident that it's pancreatic, and it's big. He had tumors all over. So it was interesting because I wasn't going to talk about this because I thought I'm probably going to cry because tomorrow's the 1 year of my mom. And so it was like one of those moments that like my mom was my best friend. Like I tell her everything. She's my kids are sick. She's right there at the hospital next to me, anything like that. So I felt like when you were talking about like, cause I had felt like I went into this weird time warp with my son. Like I didn't even get a chance to grieve my mom because I had a 3-day period where I had to jump into mom mode. And my son, it's rare that you're diagnosed in the hospital, but he had all of these tennis ball-sized tumors all over his stomach. Couldn't eat. I mean, they were just ready to do the chemo. There was not even a chance to think about anything. And it was the toughest year. So I had to fly with him, every few weeks to be with him for chemo. And then he just had a massive surgery to remove the rest of the cancer. But it was such a spiritual growing moment for me, right? And I think that sometimes God, like maybe I am too reliant on my mom, right? Like maybe God needed me to be, emotional, but maybe he needed me to be reliant on him through this season, right? Like I needed to be all in with him because this
you didn't have the fallback of your mom.
Yeah, and this was my Abrahamic test where I literally had to lay my child at the altar and let God do what he was going to do. And that is tough. Any parent, I was never understood the whole cancer thing. I've never really been around it, and to watch your child go through this and see what chemo does, it's very dark. There's a very dark side of chemo. People don't know about what it does to your mind and your body. And so just having to just trust in God and whatever he was going to do and whatever his reason and purpose was. And so but what the beautiful part of it was like, you talk about the beauty in the ashes. From day one, like I personally saw the power of prayer. There were moments where my son, in the beginning, they're like, it's pancreatic cancer. And then I just reached out and we had thousands of people praying, thousands of people. So almost 2 weeks in it, they finally get the test back and they're like, well, this is really odd. We were sure it was pancreatic from the scans, but they said, I think like somehow it started in the pancreas and the tumor just dropped out. And I was like, I don't think tumors just drop out. I think that's power of prayer, right?
Amen. Yeah.
Prayer. And then we just he had almost $2 million in medical bills, but he felt the urge to get insurance 2 months before. And so anyway, all these things,
God was there for you in that too. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then when it came to the big surgery, they're like, yeah, we're going to have to take a lot of the pancreas because this last tumor was fused to the pancreas, the organ, the liver and everything, and some of the intestines. So they were going to have to reconstruct his intestines. And so 4 hours into the surgery, it was supposed to be like a 10, 11, 12-hour surgery. 4 hours in, the doctor called me, and I was like, my heart kind of stopped. I'm like, what are you calling me for so early? And he's like, yeah, we're done. And he's like, it was the weirdest thing. The tumor just peeled off. So we're not going to, because they're like, your son's going to have diabetes. He's not going to be able to ever drink again. He won't have to eat. This is like his new life. And God, and I will tell you, you probably have been there, but this was the moment. And when I describe it to people, I just do it just like this. I felt like God, in that moment, when I hung up that phone, just said, it is finished. It is done. This trial ends today. And I've never heard him speak so loudly. And so that was my moment, because here I am, I'm thinking, I just moved to Nashville. My life is so great. Business is booming. Everything's good. And then I just get this kick to the gut twice, I don't even get a chance to recover from the first kick. But it has shown me, it has changed my relationship with God. It has made it just him and I on this journey, right? Like it has strengthened at this point, it just goes back to Jeremiah 29:11. My plans for you are good, right? So people kept saying last year, how are you doing it? How are you getting through all of this? And I'm like, I'm getting through it because of my God. People do not understand the relationship with God, how important it is. Like, I know God's not out there just torturing me because he's bored up there, right? Like, he loves me too much. So if something's happening, he's up to something. And so I just, I had to just kind of bring that up. I didn't want to go back over all that, but when you said about like not being able to fully mourn your dad and not, having that Abrahamic text moment, it is, people don't understand until you are in it. In that refining moment. And last year I was like, God, I'm refined. You can quit now. Like, I don't need any more. That's where you grow, right? And that's why I love when
I can appreciate that. Yeah. Just bouncing off of what you said, that somebody, I think it was a podcast that I was listening to, but essentially told me that when you're faithful, God is going to show up. It's just not going to look like what you want it to look like. But those moments where you have, experienced, just like I did, where I experienced God audibly talking to me, gives me the faith that I can get through anything, with him. And man, what a touching story you shared. That's, as a parent, I have a daughter with cystic fibrosis. She's 9 months old, and she has 2 cousins that have cystic fibrosis as well. And our family is navigating the fear of what that looks like. Praise God, though, there's a lot of treatments and opportunity for her to live a full life, and with modulators and whatnot, she can be just fine. So praise God for that. But I can totally empathize with you on your son, and praise God for it coming through.
Yeah, and I think that I think what you're saying with your daughter, I think it's a reminder that God can move when he wants to move, right? When he can pull. I learned one thing, that there are miracles. Like, if God can, and I think that was the thing you were talking about, where you finally had to come to God and ask him for something. Sometimes I feel like I don't even pray big enough, right? Like, I don't even think he can do it, right? It's not that I don't think, but last year proved to me that it doesn't matter. If he can move a tumor, he can do anything, right?
Well, sometimes you don't want to ask for something because you don't want God not to come through, right? Yeah. Like, at least that was where I was. It took me years to humble myself and just say, I have to have your help. I need you to move. And he did immediately in 2 areas of my life. I mean, he restored the company, and it's in the best shape it's ever been. And then he also restored me emotionally so that I could love a woman and start a family and raise a family. And that's no easy task to be a husband. It's certainly part of God's plan to glorify him, to grow us. He's chiefly concerned. This is what I wanted to share. He is not concerned with our physical world that we live in. He is concerned with that, but he's chiefly concerned with our spiritual relationship with him. And if we can remember that give thanks for trials of many kind, because they produce perseverance and strength. Everything that you and I have both experienced and shared has drawn us closer to him, and has given us the assurance that when we enter the gates of heaven, he will say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Yeah. I have to remember that God is more concerned, not with my outward experience, but with my inward experience in this life. Yeah. And that's helpful for me to remember.
Yeah. Well, I hope this gives people hope today, because I've been single for a long time, and I feel like, and I was thinking too, where's this person where? And I really learned after last year that it had a lot to do with me. Like, I just wasn't ready, right? Like, I think, and they always say, he doesn't bring you something when you want it because you're going to destroy it, right? Like, if you're not ready for it, and you're not prepared to receive that gift, he's not going to give it to you. And I think last year was a moment, somebody said that you need to have a relationship with God first before he's going to put you in a relationship with someone else, right? And I'm somebody who, I think, like everyone I've dated, all great people, they're just not, I've yet to meet a man that puts God first, right? And that's what I'm looking for. And that is too important to me, especially with the growth I've been through in the last few years. And it's like, it's got to be key. And once I accepted that God showed me last year that he's got me on every single lever. He's got my kids, he's got it. Like, I just need to put surrender this. Surrender was definitely my word of last year, going into this year, surrender. it'll all be okay, and whatever is in his timing will be. And I'd rather wait on him than settle. Like so many friends going through so much stuff because they settle. And so I think that's beautiful too. And I hope that, I have a daughter too, her name is Hope. But I feel like this episode, it should be about hope, because I think that you reminded people and the listeners that no matter what they're going through, like, God can pull you out, but sometimes he needs you to be down there for a minute, right? Maybe sometimes that's where we learn.
They say hitting rock bottom or whatever is, you have to hit rock bottom before you. And like, I tried everything I could to restore things myself, but it wasn't until I released things to God, even my dating life, right? I couldn't really date. I was trying to rebuild the company. But when I finally could start dating, I chose girls that God wasn't central in their life. And I was like, well, I'm going to fix them. I'm going to lead them to Jesus, and then it's going to be great. But and maybe that can work for some people, but that wasn't what God's plan was for me. And it led me to some pain in my dating life, because I was trying to take control. Right? I was trying to take control back from God. And then it wasn't until literally I was, in that on the floor bowing position, crying out to God, just crying out to him. Where's my family? When am I going to have my family, Lord? You said the best is yet to come, and it's right around the corner. Well, that's been years. When? And an hour later, I met the woman who's going to become my wife and my best friend. And I told her I was nervous about coming on with you. And she's like, I'm praying for you. You've got this. Just let them know who you are, and you'll be fine. And it gave me a sense of peace coming on. So it's been,
I'm so happy. And this is why I just really felt the need to do this podcast and share these stories, because I think that this is what makes the difference. And I just had a guest on the other day, and he was talking about how when you need to share the gospel, you can't come at people screaming with your Bible thumping. Like, that's not how you do it. You come at them with kindness and love and gentleness and example. You know what I mean? Like, and he brought this up, and I read this recently somewhere, like, people should be able to see God in you, right? And it's like, some days, I don't know, people probably do not see God in me. You know what I mean? It's hard to be that every day, but that's my reminder that I don't know who needs that day. So I need to try to be the best version of me, and the best one showing off how much God has, his love is in me. And it's hard to do some days. And especially, when you're on a high too, which we talked about, when everything's great, we're quick to forget God. Sure, when we're at our lows, I'm on my knees constantly. With the highs, it's like, oh, thanks, I'm good now. Thanks, I'll get back to you if I need you. And it's like that. He'll, bring you back to those knees.
To look more and love more like Jesus daily, right? To walk daily with God. It's a great prayer, but it's so hard to put into practice. And fortunately, it's not in our power, Kathy. It's in the Spirit's power, right? He's going to lead us. And I think one of the things, the human condition is, okay, I'll give you an example in my own life. I saw some people, you can imagine what's going on with politics, right? I saw some people getting into it on social media, so I thought I would step in, and I didn't necessarily reflect Jesus in that moment. And I was just frustrated, right? And I wasn't reflecting Jesus to others. And, I don't know, somebody else who was not part of the conversation direct messaged me and said, I'm public, right? It was a public posting that I was commenting on. So other people saw it, and they kind of reminded me, like, hey, like, you're kind of coming down on people that may have a different experience, and you're not reflecting Jesus. And I think that one of the hallmarks of what a Christian is not that they're always perfect. It's that they actually, when they recognize that they're willing to take the time to introspect and reflect and say, you know what, I'm wrong here. Not that I was actually factually right, but the way that I was communicating to someone was not glorifying to God in any way. Yeah. I apologized for my condescending, essentially, attitude towards them. And, that's not enough to restore that relationship. I don't think the relationship was forever marred, but it certainly is marred. And, I think, but my own walk with God, I needed to humble myself and say, hey, I'm sorry, and to repent of my frustration essentially, and my anger and my condescension, and I had to give it to God. And I think a hallmark of being a Christian is being able to reflect and admit you're wrong and go to the other person and say, hey, I'm sorry. I'd like to restore this relationship. I was wrong in this way.
Yeah.
So God gives me opportunities each and every day.
I know. Listening to you, I'm like, oh, I probably need to apologize to a few more people. But no, and I think you set a good reminder, too, for Christians out there. You know, I grew up in a religion, the Mormon church, and their whole thing is perfection, right? And this is why I named this podcast Grace Begins, because I grew up my entire life not understanding grace, because their motto is perfection, and you pay your way to heaven, basically. Works and pay your way. And I mean, you know, we'll never be good enough. I can never do that on my own. And it wasn't until a friend discussed grace with me, and I was like, and that was my moment where grace began, because I felt like that's when I learned that we're not perfect, but he's not expecting, he already knows we're not perfect. He's not expecting perfection from us. He's expecting, you know, as much obedience as we can, but he loves us so much that he's going to carry us the rest of the way. And so I think that Christians beat themselves up sometimes, where they try too hard to be perfect. And it's like, no, people, I think, are going to relate to more that I'm not perfect, that I do have flaws. But I don't want them, you know, to focus on my flaws. I want them to focus on that I love Jesus at the end no matter what, and he's my savior, and this is what matters to me at the end. And that's what I want people to remember, that she went through a stuff last year, but she talked about God and she praised God through the whole storm. And if anyone looks at my social media last year sees that I praised God through the whole storm, and that I felt like is what he needed me to do. People needed to see that, and I know that it helps people, because I was getting messages like, what a great example you are. I can't believe, you know, you've been through this and you're still praising God. And I know that gave people strength. And I think your story is going to do that for people too. It's just to remind people.
Well, thank you. And what an awesome platform for God to utilize your life experience to touch others, right? I mean, that's it's through testimony. It's not through browbeating or yelling at somebody that you're going to get them to see your way. It's literally through walking daily with God and also communicating, right? Like, people might not have seen what I was going through in the manner that I was going through it, right? Like, for me, 5-year period, 2014 to 2019, ultra spiritual, like, walk. That's all it was a spiritual walk. And people aren't going to always see that, but being in a position now, or, you know, 5 years later, to be able to reflect back and say, you know, this is what my journey was like. I really think it's relatable. I mean, I've heard so many other testimonial type stories like yours, my own, that have helped me to know and love God better, and also to, like, want to be able to have a testimony. Like, what is it in First Peter, I think, says, always be prepared to give an answer about your faith and, like, why you share that. And so it's these challenges in life where you put your faith and trust in God, allowing him to show up, and then giving him the glory for it.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it just, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your testimony. I think that a lot of people, you know, and I always pray that every episode that goes out, that it's going to go to the right person and find the right person. And, you know, how did God just bring one soul unto me? You know, that's all that God, you know. And I hope this brings many souls, and somebody will hear your story. Maybe there's a business owner right now, or entrepreneur going through a hard time, and I hope that this gives them some hope and reminder that God's up to something good. We just got to give them a minute. You know, times and seasons are tough when they're not on our timeline, but God will do beautiful things with it, as we see from both of us. So it's super, super amazing. Well, tell us where people, if someone obviously wants to charter a jet, or, you know, where can people find you? Tell us, the best place for people to reach out to you.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, so stratosjets.com is the primary franchisor website, and we can connect you with one of many agencies that can serve you. And briefly about Stratos Jets, you know, our whole mission is to glorify God in our work, and given the chance, we'd like to demonstrate what that looks like.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, it looks like God's already doing great things in your business, and I know he's going to keep doing great things, you know, while you're with him on this journey. And so I wish you only the best, and I'll be praying for you. And when I can start chartering jets, I'm going to call you first, I promise.
We'll be there for you.
All right, perfect. I know what's that new one in the background you're talking about. That's the one I'll take, yeah.
I think that's a good choice.
Yeah.
Any one of those in that lineup are pretty nice, so.
Perfect. All right, thank you guys so much for coming back. We'll be back next week with a new episode, and have a blessed week, everyone. Take care.
Feel your heart breaking, and you're thinking it's the end.